and today we're having one of our panels. We're midway through our UnSure series, and I thought it'd be good if we talked about, or if we heard from Pastor Tim and Pastor Stan and Jordan. We're going to talk about deciding together. So one of the things that I thought was really interesting was the night before Jesus chose the 12, he had a bunch of guys, who were following him. But the night before he chose the 12, he went up to the mountain, which in Jewish literature is where people go to encounter God, people like Moses and Elijah and Abraham. And he spent the night in prayer. And I'm sure part of it is discerning and going through the process with God and the Holy Spirit and the triune God together. But I think part of it might have to do with their relationship with one another and attachment. And so I'm going to start off the panel by first asking Tim, in 2 minutes or less, can you explain attachments? What is that?
So, attachment theory is, based upon this guy named John Bowlby. He's this British psychologist, psychoanalyst. Basically, attachment theory states that our current relationships, friendships with others, family members, so on and so forth, are shaped or are largely impacted by our past early caregiver relationships. Caregivers, namely mom, or most commonly mom and or dad. And so the theory basically states that the relationships with the caregiver could either be categorized as securely attached or insecurely attached. The former being that you had a father or mother who was very responsive to your needs, who built an environment where you can trust him or her. They were very sensitive to your emotions, and they created a sense of safety in that relationship. Insecure attachment basically is the opposite, where you have inconsistent parenting. There is often maybe sometimes abuse or neglect, and the parent was not sensitive to the child's needs. So the theory basically states that with time in our current relationships, those who are securely attached may have more positive outcomes in relationships. In contrast, those who are insecurely attached with our caregivers in our current relationships might have more insecurities in our relationships.
Oh, that was good. Very clear and concise. We wouldn't expect anything less. Or more. Anyway, you know what I'm saying. That's you. Tim's like, you insulted me. I don't know what I'm saying. Okay, let's move on. Stan and Jordan, can you share how our attachment with God and our attachment with others affect our decision making?
So Tim talked about the attachment is learned from your primary caregiver. And that's actually biblical. And I'd like to read a passage from 1 John, and it goes like this. How can we be sure what God has done and we stand steady to provide eyewitness testimonies to the reality that the Father sent the Son to be Savior of the world? If anyone unites with our confession that Jesus is God's own Son, then God truly lives in that person, and that person lives in God. We have experienced and have entrusted our lives to the love of God in us. God is love. Anyone who lives faithfully in love also lives faithfully in God, and God lives in him. This love is fulfilled with us so that on the day of judgment we have confidence based on our identification with Jesus in this world. Love will never invoke fear. Perfect love expels fear, particularly the fear of punishment. The one who fears punishment has not been completed through love. We love because he first loved us. If someone claims I love God but hates his brother or sister, then he's a liar. Anyone who does not love a brother or sister whom he has seen cannot possibly love God, whom he has never seen. He gave us a clear command that all who love God must also love their brothers and sisters. So basically, this is equating that if we really know how much God loves us, that we're going to love people. We're going to love, and it's going to be shown in our relationships. And the converse of that is true. If our relationships are not good, then maybe we don't really understand how much God loves us. And we need to go back to that attachment.
Yeah, and for me, I've noticed our attachment also greatly affects our decision making, or it could. And so, many of our decisions do affect others in our lives, particularly family, friends, close ones. And more I'm realizing like how secure or insecure I feel in specific relationships can really affect how I'm making my decisions, or at least how I'm feeling when I'm making certain decisions. So for me, I identify with, I think, more of an insecure, or I think when I was researching it, like anxious attachment is another terminology, I guess. So for me, that means like my default and my knee-jerk reaction is if I have to make a decision that's going to affect others, like what is the other party going to feel? What are they going to think about my decision? And I tend to elevate the other party's needs and desires and minimize my own. And so this could even be as small as like attending a get-together or something. So as much as I love getting together with people, life and having a toddler and everything is really stressful and tiring. And so sometimes I really feel like exhausted and I need rest. But like I said, my default reaction is to put those needs aside and just suck it up and go to avoid conflict or disappointment. Because in an insecure relationship, I'm fearful that I'm going to disappoint them or lose someone or not be a good daughter, friend, family member, whatever it may be. And so there's a lot of worry that I'm going to make a wrong decision or make a mistake. But when I feel more secure, I feel like oftentimes I'm able to quiet a lot of those anxious voices and make a choice out of love for myself and who I was created to be. So more authentic and aligned choices. So Tim can correct me, but I feel like in some relationships, even though from my childhood I do have that default like anxious, insecure attachment, as I've grown older, I feel like I've been able to feel more secure in certain relationships around me. And that's been really freeing because in those relationships, I feel like I can make decisions that feel very authentic and very aligned with myself without worrying about, oh no, how are they going to respond or what are they going to think? And so in a secure relationship, I do feel very free to be like, it's been a really long week, or like, oh, Elena just started school, like I'm very exhausted. Can we just postpone or reschedule our get together so I can rest? And because I know for me, like rest is really important, and that's a very high value for me and my well-being. And I know that in those relationships where I feel secure, that they love me and they care about me and they want me to rest and take care of myself. And so even if we've been planning this for months, or even if it's not what they would ideally want in those specific secure relationships, I still feel safe and comfortable enough to make that decision that's best for me, because I know that they also want what's best for me and care that I'm taking care of myself and my needs as well.
For sharing. I think feeling secure really makes a big difference in our decision making. So now, if we recognize that our insecure attachment is kind of taking over, Tim, do you have like a couple of suggestions of things we can do to move towards secure attachment?
So I hate to be technical, but basically we're either securely attached or insecurely attached to our caregiver. All subsequent relationships aren't really classified as insecure or secure attachments. Bowlby would argue that we would have what's called a corrective relationship or a corrective experience. So I think your question is, if we have like insecure attachments, could we have a corrective experience with others? And definitely. I think a lot of psychotherapy models are based upon a basic 3-step process, which is basically awareness, understanding, and change. And so the first thing is in our relationships, can we understand thematically, look at some trends in terms of how we relate to others? And that's the awareness piece, right? We all have insecurities when we relate to others. Sometimes in relationships we get jealous or envious, or sometimes it's hard to trust others, or it's hard to commit. For example, for me, I've noticed some individuals, some therapists have commented that I struggle with people who are needy. Like it's hard for me when people are a lot for me. And that's the awareness piece. So last week, I think it's last week, Kotz, he mentioned like surround yourself with people who can give you the truth and they don't have there's no negative ramifications with them giving you the truth. If you can have some friends who can help you become aware of those trends that they observe in you in friendships, that'd be really helpful. So that's the awareness piece. The second piece is understanding. So once you have an idea thematically of how you relate to others, then you have to look at the origin story of like, how did that come to be? How did that develop? And a lot of times it's related to our family of origin and our relationship with our, again, primary caregivers or parents. So for me, for example, the awareness piece is the neediness, right? The understanding for me is, I had parents, and some of you know my parents, they're not needy at all. They're hyper independent, and they're very ambitious, and like, you know, parents, there's a lot of PDA, and they watch TV at night, and there's a lot of love. That was very foreign to me. So growing up, it was not something that was modeled to me. So when people come to me and they're sort of needy in relationships, I'm like, whoa, what's that? It's just completely different. So that's one part of why, the understanding piece of why it's hard for me to deal with needy folks. And then the last part, which is the change portion, you know, awareness, understanding, and change. The change portion is actually the easiest. The hardest is the second step. But, you know, take a risk. And can I engage in somebody who's a little bit more needy? Or can I tell them why that's more difficult for me? Or can I have friends keep me accountable in this area? So that's one practical thing that you can do is sort of the change awareness, understanding, and change, and looking at one of those three steps and which ones like need development or which one are you weak at.
Oh, that's good. Okay. So we were very very mind-oriented. I think that was all really good information, and thank you guys for sharing. So now we're going to bring it to the heart. So I'm going to ask each of you to share maybe a decision that you made in the past that affected a family member or your family, and how your insecure attachment that you experienced in your family of origin affected your decision. Or I don't know who wants to go first.
Sure, I'll go first. And then we'll just get better and better. So for me, a decision I thought of was when I decided to do my 2-year missions project after graduating from college. So it's called Servant Partners, so I don't have to keep saying that long thing. But yeah, it definitely affected my parents in particular, and I included Daniel in there because we had been dating for a couple years at the time, so we weren't married, but long enough that it would affect him. And so, yeah, I think growing up and in high school, like I mentioned, I did feel like a more insecure attachment with my parents. But during college, I was able to talk to them a lot, and I think having the distance between Culver City and UCLA, that distance really helped us. But I don't know, just processing with them, they were great and apologized for things, and we talked through things that I was anxious about. So definitely still a work in progress, was then, still is now. But I think because we were able to kind of address more of the awareness and understanding pieces, I did feel a lot more secure in my relationship with my parents at that point. And so for me at that point, I probably didn't think about them enough. Like I probably they were probably a little bit worried about me moving to South LA, or a little bit sad that I wouldn't see them a lot for the next couple years, or I wouldn't come to Westside anymore. But if I'm honest, I don't know if that really like swayed my decision that much. I was like, oh, they'll be fine, which is good, I guess. Like, oh yeah, I feel secure now. And then Daniel, of course, he's always supportive. So whatever I wanted was good with him. And I probably wanted to feel more insecure because I wanted them to just tell me what to do because I hate making decisions. But it was nice now knowing that they were very supportive either way. So for me, this is why we started with me, and then Tim can tell you the technical things. But like for me, I felt like really insecure with my relationship with God, actually. And I still go through seasons of feeling like secure and like anxious, insecure attachment with God. But I feel like that was also informed by like my upbringing and growing up in the church and being really involved in college ministry and feeling like as a child internalizing the message that you have to do what pleases God or you have to work really hard in order to stay close to God. So I think at that point I felt like I had to make the right quote unquote godly decision. Like, God will love you either way. He'll forgive you, of course, but there is like a more right and a more wrong decision. And like Kotz talked about like last week, like discernment is very important, and I still feel like discernment is very important, and listening to God when we're making decisions is very important. But I feel like at that time I didn't understand like that God also desires for me to live out my needs and my desires too, and that he cares about those, and that of course they love me no matter what, but like they want me to live out authentically and how they created me to be. And so now I feel like oh, it is more of a deciding together thing, which makes a lot more sense because God does work through people and with people more often than not, and he doesn't want to just tell us exactly what to do and we're just like robots, right? So it's a lot more aligned with like what I know to be about God, and it does feel like a more communal thing. And so now if I were to either make a decision again like that or tell my younger self advice, I feel like I would of course still feel really anxious because it's a big decision, but I think I would want to like process it differently. So instead of just saying like, okay, my parents and Daniel are fine with whatever, so let's just like put them to the side and just focus on what I want. Like I think I would want to share more of my needs and desires and fears with them and hear their input more. And they know me, they know who I am, they know my blind spots, so like seeking out their feedback would be really important to me. And I think I would want to know what their needs, desires, and fears are too, not so that I could be like, oh no, they're really scared for me, so I'm not going to move there, but just so that everyone feels heard and valued, and that everyone's needs and desires and fears are on equal playing field, right? No one feels minimized or shut down. And same with God too, like trying to process in a similar way, like, okay, where are you at? Where are your desires? Where does the discernment process that Kotz was talking about? And then, like, as I come into play, kind of what decision feels like the next authentic step for pursuing wholeness and health, which to me includes like deepening my relationship with God, right? So I think in that way, when I think about deciding together and making it communal, it feels like thinking about what decision will bring more wholeness and health and intimacy with myself and with God and with others. So yeah, I think that decision, all that to say, I would still make the same decision, but I would just want to approach it differently.
I think, Stan, you're next. Thank you for sharing, Jordan. We'll hear from Stan.
Well, I was thinking about two decisions, but I'll do just one that happened in chronological order, so to speak. So I was not always a pastor. In fact, I never wanted to be a pastor. And when I graduated from college, I went into business. I was in the pension business. And a little bit of what Tim was talking about, the attachment I had with my parents, it was not necessarily something that they thought that was an honorable kind of thing. They felt, I know my mom felt I was lazy in school, and so I could have done better. But they were happy that I found something that I could do, they thought, fairly well. And I did do well. I did, the company I was with grew, and we serviced pension plans, and we went from 30 plans when I first started to over 300 in 3 years. And I was in charge of all of the, we were basically at the pension department for small companies. So I was in charge of seeing all the records were kept, so that if the government ever came in to see if it was properly administered and things, I would be the one that would be able to show that. And so I had 5 people under me, and everything was looking good as far as outwardly. But inwardly, I never wanted to be a person that was known for making a lot of money. I wanted to be able to say that I made a difference in somebody's life. And so that was always gnawing at me, even through all this time. And so what happened was, what I had decided was, as soon as I have a younger daughter, Julie, and as soon as Julie graduated from college, I would quit what I'm doing and take on a second career. And so, but not pastoring. It was going to be where I also had an interest in apologetics, which is defending the faith. So I would go back to school and become get a degree in Christian apologetics and maybe teach. Or back then they had a lot of organizations where you could join and be part of the research team and things. And so that was kind of my vision. But there was Gary Galton, I was going to Mission Valley at the time, kind of challenged me and said, well, what keeps you from not doing it now? And I really didn't have a good reason, because there wasn't more for me to do at my work. Everybody knew I was a Christian. They respected it, but nobody was coming to me and asking me if they had a problem, how to solve that or anything. That was not the nature of the relationship as a boss. So it was very limiting. The other thing was, I felt like the organization as a whole was basically not sending a message I wanted to send, because basically we were helping people become more selfish, in my opinion, because we figured out ways to protect their money, and we kind of made money the security for them, so that they had enough money to retire and they didn't have to worry about anything, which is kind of a pipe dream anyway, but that's another story. But in any event, I didn't feel that this was where God wanted me to be. But the part of me, well, as you all know and I've shared before, I'm a very stable kind of guy. I don't like change, even if it's good change. I have a saying that I don't like surprises even when they're good. And so that's kind of why I just stayed and just wanted to wait it out. But when Gary challenged me, I decided, okay, this was not just going to affect me, it's going to affect my family. And so I had Sandy and Valerie and Julie all pray individually and ask God if I should leave or not. And each of them, and then I prayed too. And my leaning was, despite who I know I to be, not liking change and things, was to change. But I wanted some confirmation, so it's kind of like Gideon. I needed a fleece, right? And so what happened was each of the, Sandy and Valerie and Julie, all independently, I talked to them individually, came to the same decision that I had, that I should leave. And so that was kind of God's way of saying, go. And so I did it. It wasn't easy. What I had to do was I went to 3/4 time at my work, and I went to school in the evening. And so for 2 years, I went to Biola, and it's not real fun to drive at 5 o'clock in the evening from Pasadena to Biola, but I did it. And also over the summer, I would take classes during the day. So what they had was intensive over the weekend. So I would spend my weekend in a class. So I did it, and eventually I did become a pastor, which is also another story. But the whole process is what I wanted to emphasize in this decision process is I did involve other people, and that's important, and especially people who have a stake in it, but also I know love me, and that was important. And so part of what I gained from this decision-making process was, God is not so much interested in what we decide, I believe, as what is becoming part of our character or our heart in the way we're deciding. And when we even if we make the quote right decision for the wrong motives, I don't think he's necessarily happy. I think he's more happy if we make quote the wrong decision but have the right motives, because it's going to give him an opportunity to build on that. And that's what he's wanting to do, is build a relationship with us, an attachment with us. I said my mom and dad didn't like the way I chose my profession, but they were happy with it, or at least I was successful at it. They were very unhappy with me moving from it. And they were very unhappy about me becoming a pastor. They still, well, I don't know still, but because my dad's gone, but to my mom, I've retired when I left the business world. And so I've been in retirement 15 years. So that's, but I understand that. That's just the way she views things, and that's fine. So making the following God and doing the right decision doesn't make everybody happy either. Even people who love you, it doesn't make them happy. But and not because they're trying to be selfish or anything. There's a lot of reasons my mom is not happy with what I chose, but she is happy that it allows me to be able to spend nights with her and things. So that makes up for some of it, I guess. But anyway, that's where I feel like we need to understand that God is not a God who's looking to make sure we answer all the questions on the test right. That God is a God who wants us to be able to see that he's taken the test together with us, and he wants us to learn from whatever we decide, that he's going to take that and use it as an opportunity to let us know how great his love is. So.
I just appreciate Jordan and Stan's vulnerability. Like, that's what I appreciate about both of you. Like Jordan saying, I have a tendency to feel insecure in relationships and I have an anxious style, and that's in front of your mom here, and Paul's here, and then Stan, you telling us about how your parents didn't really approve of your profession even to this day. I think it's so raw and transparent. So I appreciate that. I'll try to do the same with my response. Who's a senior in high school here? Lucas. So Gene, how many colleges do you want Lucas to apply to? That's a very great response. How many colleges do you want to apply to, Lucas? Okay, you guys are like good politicians. Like, not a good firm answer. Dana, can you give me a response? 15. Okay. Wow. Okay. Overachiever. So Lucas doesn't want as much as 15. I feel like those are very normal responses. So with my experience, my dad wanted me to apply to UCLA. My mom one day came home right around application season and gave me application materials to APU. So I decided just to apply to UCLA, and thank God I graduated from the greatest university. I didn't even apply to APU, but I feel like the messaging there was like, Tim, you go into the ministry route at APU from my mom, and then my dad was like, hey, stick in the secular, some type of field, ideally science, because that's what my dad sort of comes from. So that was, I think, my internal struggle. I never heard those words from them explicitly, but that's just what I felt, and that was the impact that I felt. So, let's see. I feel like decisions, we talk about decisions as if they are a one-time decision we make, and then once we make them, then it's done and over with. But in fact, I think most decisions are ongoing. Like every day we wake up and we choose to be the best husband or spouse as possible. Every day we wake up, we try and decide to be the best informed, influential, impactful parent as possible. That's the decision I want to share about today, which is my decision to become a bivocational minister, which is why I'm sitting here today. It was a calling I received many years ago. So I guess speaking out loud, I really did try to please both my parents by having one foot in the science world and one foot in ministry. So that's more material for me to discuss with my therapist or with other friends. So, it's a struggle, I think, mostly for my family, for Megan, and for Masami. I grew up as a pastor's kid, and I don't want him to grow up with that pressure that he grew up with. So I guess I'm asking all you to help me with that in this church as he's raised, if you can do your best not to place so much pressure on him, because it's a lot as a pastor's kid. And then Megan, for me, it's the ministry part, and then it's also the two jobs part. So a lot of the ministry that I do is on the weeknights, and then we only have like one weekend day, which is Saturday, and then this is a work day for me. So that gets in the way of our family time, so that's tough. And also just being in ministry these days, I grew up in the 90s, and 90s it was cool to be a Christian. It was popular to be a Christian. We go to youth group and all your friends are there. None of my friends right now don't really go to church. And it's hard to be a Christian with my generation and below. It's not cool. It's not popular, and there's many reasons why. But many people strayed me away from ministry. My mentors in the secular field are like, what are you doing? It's a terrible career decision. You're not going to make much money. You're going to take time away from your practice. And I totally get it, but this decision was based on a calling. And it's a decision that I continue to make, and I continue to be called here. I love you guys here. I love the family, love the leadership here. And so that's the decision that It's an ongoing struggle, but also ongoing affirmation as well.
Thank you for sharing, Tim, and all of you and your vulnerability. And decision making is so complex. And I used to think, oh, just think of your pros and cons. But it takes time, and it's painful sometimes when you think of your family of origin and what your trauma or whatever you experienced. And so it takes a lot of courage and a lot of time. And I just appreciate you guys even spending the time to share with us, because it's not easy. So we just wanted to encourage all of you that as you make your decisions, that you just continue in seeking the Lord and seeking, looking in your own hearts and what your experiences are, and like what Tim said, to be just open to how the Spirit's leading and how He invites us to be aware and to change, understand, aware, and change. So, I just thank you for this time, and thank you for your courage and listening and being partaking in our sermon series too. Okay, let's pray.